Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time it is a review of the 2003 sequel, Bad Boys 2. Now, Bad Boys 2, to me, personally, is a badass sequel and a badass movie. I do not understand the metric ton of criticism and outright hate this film gets from certain critics. I don't get why this got 1 out of 5 stars from Roger Ebert. I don't understand why this has such a low rating of Rotten Tomatoes. I don't get why this film is considered to be like one of the worst sequels. I don't get it at all, to be perfectly honest. Uh, it's one of those sequels to me personally that's better than the first film. And not only that, it takes things to a whole other level. It genuinely raises the stakes and is a genuine improvement in quality in terms of the direction, in terms of action sequences, in terms of the consistency of them, and the overall genuine impact. I mean, this film, to me personally, has some of the best action set pieces of this particular decade, and has one of the best car chases I've ever seen. And it's just one of those things that I don't feel that this film gets enough credit for succeeding as well as it does and excelling, to be honest, not just succeeding, excelling when it comes to particular action sequences and the dynamic between the two leads. Martin Lawrence and Will Smith are an absolute blast to watch, work off of one another in this film, and they have undeniable chemistry. I just don't understand. I don't get why this is so hated. To me, Bad Boys 2 is right up there with RoboCop 2 and Predator 2 when it comes to maligned sequels that for some reason get all kinds of crap that I don't understand. I get it if people aren't a fan of the film because it is pretty loud, it is pretty brash, it is really over the top, and at times it's a bit too much. But I don't get the criticism that it just sucks. That's what I don't get. I don't understand that. So Bad Boys 2 is directed by Michael Bay, who also directed the first film. And in my opinion, we get a better Michael Bay. It's understandable. Michael Bay, when he did the first film, that was his first film that he ever directed. This is 8 years later. You have a more experienced, more skilled Michael Bay, who's had more time to hone his craft and his signature style, and it shows. I mean, he is a master when it comes to creating a slick, stylish-looking action film. And he's also one of the best directors out there when it comes to directing slick and stylish action sequences. I think he's just one of the best directors, period, when it comes to shooting action in the first place. And it's one of those things that I don't think he gets enough credit. I think Michael Bay is honestly an underrated director. I said it, and I'm going to stand by it. Because I don't think he's as much of a hack, or as much of a loser, or as much of a terrible director as a lot of people like to paint him out to be nowadays. Bayhem has been considered to be a negative for people, and what Bayhem is tons of explosions, car chases, and gunplay. And is that really a bad thing? It's in an action movie. Isn't that what you want out of an action film? Don't you want tons of explosions, car chases, and gunplay? I know I do. Oh, the action sequences are over the top. Isn't that what you want out of an action film? Do you want boring, play it safe action sequences in your action movie? Is that what we want out of action films nowadays? And you don't even get that in your Marvel films. So I don't get it. I don't understand the particular criticism that Bay is a shitty director or one of the worst directors ever because he's done films that have dumb humor in them and happen to have tons of explosions and gunplay and car chases. Especially the car chases and explosions and gunplay part. I don't get that at all. But to each their own. But yeah, when it comes to this particular wheelhouse, loud, over-the-top action movies, Michael Bay is one of the best in the business at doing that. So this film is no exception. I think his direction in this is great for what it is. It's intended to be a over-the-top action music video. Like, that's the whole point of these uh, these films that Michael Bay does, these loud, uh, crazy action movies. So I definitely think that his direction falls right in line with his style and his sensibility. Uh, Nice use of slow mos in sequences. Some really crazy camera work. At times seems a little bit too much, like the Jamaican drug house sequence, where things go on a little bit too long in terms of his stylish direction. But I still appreciate the effort, and I appreciate the fact that he was trying to do something different. Other stuff like the slow mo POV of a bullet going through Martin Lawrence's ass in the beginning of the movie. Like, there's a lot of just crazy stuff in this that I genuinely like. I like his direction. I think he did a really good job, especially when it comes to the action sequences. He really knows how to shoot action, especially when it comes to stunts. He's a really great director when it comes to shooting car chases and explosions and gunplay and really big action sequences. And that's a genuine talent. And Michael Bay deserves way more credit for that, in my opinion, because it's not easy. It's not really not easy to shoot big giant action sequences like that with so many different moving parts, with so many different things that have to go right, and to make it look as epic and amazing as he does. So, yeah, put some respect on Bay's name, especially for things like the car chase on the freeway in this movie, which in my opinion is one of the best car chases I have ever seen. It is insane. And there's even a line of dialogue was like, "This is fucking crazy." And I'm like, "Yeah, it is. It's fucking insane." But that's why it's so awesome. It's such an awesome action sequence and an awesome car chase because of how insane it is. We got cars falling all over the place, getting dumped out of the back of a car hauler, and they're just flipping and crashing, and it's just fucking nuts. It really is. And this film really is a crazy film in so many different ways. Uh, the script by Ron Shelton, Jerry Stahl, and Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen? Seth Rogen? What? It's got to be a different Seth. No, it is. It's actually that Seth Rogen. That Seth Rogen wrote, I guess, parts of Bad Boys 2? What did he write? I didn't know that. I'm really curious. What did Seth Rogen do? Seth Rogen? That's on Wikipedia though. That could just be a bunch of bullshit. Because it just says Ron Shelton and Jerry Stahl. I don't think Seth Rogen. Maybe he did. Let me check. I need to check his IMDb. Because Seth Rogen? Did he really have something to do with Bad Boys 2? I need to see this. Let's check his status as a writer. Yeah, he's not listed as a writer on IMDb. So somebody just edited the Wikipedia for Bad Boys 2 to throw Seth Rogen in there. Because he really didn't have anything to do with the screenplay for that film. But, it's just... It's kind of a fun thing to think about, like Seth Rogen and Bad Boys 2, but it's a total hoax. There's nothing... Unless he said something in an interview or something, or it's an uncredited thing, I don't know. Maybe it's an uncredited thing. I have no idea. But on Wikipedia, it's as if he actually is a confirmed writer, but he's not. That just goes to show you, folks, Wikipedia is not always the most reliable source. But anyway, the script is fine. It takes a similar plot line as the first film with a criminal, in this instance, a villain named Johnny Tapia, who, in my opinion, is an incredibly weak villain and is easily one of the worst things about this movie. One of the few things about the film that I genuinely don't care for is the villain. I think he's weak. Tapia. I've been calling him Tilapia, but I mean, it's just, might as well be Tilapia at this point. But anyway, Johnny Tapia, his real name is Hector Juan Carlos, and the actor who plays him is Jordi Mollà, and I thought the guy was just straight up shit, to be honest. I thought he did a really bad job because he just didn't have any sort of he wasn't intimidating, he wasn't memorable. He was the epitome of a forgettable villain. His approach for his persona was that of Spanish Billy Mitchell. And what I mean by Billy Mitchell is, if you've seen the documentary Fistful of Quarters, the King of Kong story, there's a nemesis in that film who is an actual person named Billy Mitchell. And he's got long hair, and he's got the goatee, and he's a total smarmy douchebag. And this Tapia character is just Spanish Billy Mitchell, and it's not very effective in this kind of movie. As your main villain, as your main bad guy, he's not trying to beat some guy at Donkey Kong. Okay, he's trying to be intimidating and be this head of this. He's trying to be a drug lord, so it just doesn't really mesh, if you ask me. I think they should have went a different route and had a different actor, or had a different character or something. I don't know if that's the script that's to blame or what, but Johnny Tapia is easily one of the worst things about this movie. But in terms of the script, yes, it does have a similar thing as a plot line as the first film, with drugs that are being smuggled and money that the main character, the villain, not really the main character, the villain wants to obtain. So it's very similar in that regard, but it throws in a little bit of a rescue plot line in the last 20-30 minutes, where the bad boys, Marcus and Mike, have to go to Cuba to rescue Marcus's sister, Sydney, and in the process violate laws in order to do so. So the stakes definitely get higher in that regard, because now they're doing something illegal. But that's really as far as the script goes in terms of the main plot. That's the main plot of the film. It's not very detailed. It's not very complicated. The film is as long as it is because of the excess. The long action sequences, the excessive comedy bits, and so on and so forth. And in some instances, the excess of the script is a bit too much. There's a bit too much fat, so to speak. They could have trimmed some fat, and it would have made the film even better. But in other instances, the excess is what makes this film so epic. The excess is what makes it excellent. So if you take away the excess, it's not as enjoyable or as crazy or as insane of a film anymore. So it's one of those things where I take the good with the bad. It's an exercise in excess, but it's an excellent exercise in excess for the majority of the film and a majority of the script. And I probably, a lot of the lines of dialogue and a lot of the action bits were probably not things that were due to the writer, to the screenwriter. So that's probably stuff that Bay was responsible for, or when it comes to the dialogue, probably Martin Lawrence and Will Smith improvising. But either way, I think it's a solid screenplay, despite the fact that there are some elements that are a little bit too lengthy or a little bit overlong. Overall, I do think it's a solid script. It raises the stakes effectively, and it's a simple but, I guess, complicated enough plot that there's still enough sort of a mystery going on, in particular about the drugs and about Marcus and Mike trying to prove that Tapia is actually smuggling drugs, and they're not just causing trouble and causing all kinds of havoc for nothing. So, where the most intriguing aspects of the screenplay come from is stuff like that, where the drugs are being smuggled in dead bodies, the different scenarios and different situations that Mike and Marcus have to wind up in to try to figure out what's going on and to stop Tapia. The whole climax in the end where they go to Cuba illegally, so stuff like that. The opening sequence where Mike and Marcus are undercover at a Klan rally. So this is the kind of stuff that I think the script is quite solid at. These situations and scenarios where our two leads are involved in. Now, speaking of two leads, I mean, I can't sing enough praises for Martin Lawrence and Will Smith in this. They are two badasses, two bad boys, and their chemistry was really good in the first film, but it's on par with the chemistry in the first film, if not even better, because there's more for them to do. There's a lot more for them to do in this one. They are not asked to play pretend when it comes to pretending to be one another like the first film and a large chunk of the subplot. In Bad Boys 2, they're Marcus and Mike, and they're that way for the entire running time. And it's such a joy to watch. I love these two working together. And it's one of those things where their banter is just hilarious. Their back and forth is always enjoyable to me. They are two of the best buddy cop duos out there. I mean, they're right up there with Riggs and Murtaugh and any of the other buddy cop duos that you can come up with. I think they're on equal footing with the best of the best. And this film is a prime example of that. Of these two just being great when it comes to the action sequences, but also being great when it comes to the scenes where they're just trying to make you laugh. I've already talked about Jordi Mollà, but yeah, he's the epitome of forgettable. Spanish Billy Mitchell, no thank you. Gabrielle Union, she was good as Sydney, who ultimately wound up being Will Smith's love interest, which creates this crazy dynamic between Marcus and Mike, because Mike is in a relationship with his sister. So it really causes a strain on the relationship, and there's some nice comedic bits that come from that. Peter Stormare was I liked him as Alexei. I think he should have been the main villain. To be perfectly honest, I think Peter Stormare should have been the main villain. He was charismatic, he was fun to watch, but at the same time, I think he could have pulled off the intimidation factor a lot more than Jordi Mollà was able to. Because Peter Stormare just has that innate ability to play characters like that. He's done it before, and he'll keep doing it. He's one of the better character actors when it comes to playing bad guys, and I think he just would have been great. And it would have been a nice change of pace to have a Russian mobster, and the bad boys have to face him, and maybe they have to end up going to Russia in the end instead of Mexico or Cuba, but Cuba and Mexico works too. He could have had some. He could have been a Russian mobster who's doing stuff in Cuba. Why not? But that's just me personally. Theresa Randle was a lot of fun as Teresa Burnett, as usual. Joe Pantoliano was his angry, awesome self as Captain Conrad Howard. He's right up there with the best of the best when it comes to the angry police chiefs in films like this. I would have loved to have seen the the police chief from Last Action Hero and the police chief from Beverly Hills Cop and Joe Pantoliano's character all in one room together, just chewing out Marcus and Mike. That would just that's just a scene that would just be absolute gold. But anyway, yeah, I really enjoy Joe Pantoliano and his character, Captain Howard. Other characters from the first film also make an appearance. I think Carlos and Roberto. I think those are characters that were in the first film. Could be wrong though. A lot of Sanchez and John Cena. And you also have some other newcomers like Henry Rollins, who plays the leader of the TNT, sort of a SWAT team for the police. And you also have Michael Shannon. Yeah, that Michael Shannon as Floyd Poteet, who is one of the members of the KKK who Mike and Marcus end up kidnapping to try to help them find Tapia. And it is such a surreal thing to watch Michael Shannon play a character like this, because later on in his career he'd be known for being a much more serious actor. So here he is playing a redneck stereotype and honestly a loser. So it's just one of those like, whoa. Like it's hard to believe that this guy would go on to be General Zod and Man of Steel and do all this other stuff and be in I believe he was in The Shape of Water. So and be in films like that. I mean, it's like one of those things you're just like, what? How did this happen? It's just one of those crazy things that I guess you got to start somewhere. I mean, isn't that true? Definitely, definitely true. And yeah, he was Strickland in The Shape of Water. There's other actors and actresses, but that's the main cast. Dan Marino has a cameo as himself, and the main reason for that is because Shelton, one of the writers, he was known for writing a lot of sports comedies and sports dramas. So he threw that in there because that was his forte, and it worked. It was a fun cameo, and it made sense with the whole Miami uh, love fest that was going on in the movie. And honestly, has been a big part of this franchise is the Miami thing. So, there are some aspects of this film other than the moments where it's a bit too over the top or things go on a little bit too long that don't quite work for me and definitely prevent it from being a great film. I would say now I would still say this is a great film the in terms of what it's trying to do and the type of film that it is. I think it definitely is a great over the top action movie, but it prevents it from being like one of the best ever, so to speak. And that one of the main things is the score. I don't really care for Trevor Rabin's score for this. A lot of the times it sounds like a generic karaoke track for a rap song. It's from the 2000s. It just is a really generic sounding soundtrack, and I'm not really a big fan of the score. I don't think it really enhances the film that well, and at times just doesn't really do much for me. And I think its tone is a little bit all over the place too, because it seems like it's one style and then it's another. And apparently, the original composer for Bad Boys, he did express and was definitely willing to do the score for the sequel. But what happened was, sadly, Michael Bay wanted something different for this film. So Mark Mancina, the original composer for Bad Boys, who did a absolutely bang up, great job with the score, one of the best scores out there from that era and of this kind of movie. The main theme for Bad Boys is memorable and really cool. And it's completely missing from this film, and it's sorely missed. And the reason why is because Mancina, he wanted to do it, but Michael Bay only wanted him to do action cues and not do what he wanted to do, which was a melodic score with some action cues. And understandably, Mark Mancina was like, that's bullshit. I'm not doing that. And so he dropped out and he got replaced by Trevor Rabin, who had done some work with Michael Bay before. And it's a damn shame because this film would have been even better with Mancina's score. It's something that was just sorely missed, and you could tell in any action sequence, you could tell in any moment in this movie where you're not hearing the Bad Boys theme, the iconic theme, you're not hearing his signature touch. It was just one of those things where I personally feel Mark Mancina's score is integral to the overall success and impact of Bad Boys. It captures the spirit of the character so well, and it's just completely missing from this movie. And it was really a mistake. It was a big mistake on Michael Bay's part to essentially push him out because he didn't want to sacrifice his own creativity. It's just one of those things that just really a shitty, shady thing that Michael Bay did. And one of the few things about this film that I genuinely don't like is the score and how Mark Mancina was treated, and how ultimately he wasn't able to do this because Michael Bay was being more than a tad bit petty. But I mean, other aspects of this are really definitely quite noteworthy. The cinematography by Amr Mokri, especially when it comes to getting the most out of Miami and Cuba and in these other locations. It's just a really great looking film in terms of the cinematography. The editing by Mark Goldblatt, Thomas A. Muldoon, and Roger Barton. At times, stuff could have been cut differently. Things are a little bit too chaotic. Things are a little bit too hectic. But at other times, it's just right. So it's one of those things where it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of the editing. But when it's done and handled the right way, it's excellent. When it's not so excellent. So it's one of those films where, like I said, it's just a mixed bag when it comes to the editing. The runtime's 147 minutes, which is a little bit too long. I honestly do feel some things could have been cut a little bit. The stuff with Tappy and his mom, I think it's supposed to be some kind of comic relief or whatever, but it doesn't really work. Some of the Tappy scenes could have been cut down considerably. Some of the other bits could have been cut down. Like I said, the Jamaican drug house sequence is definitely one of them. And when it comes to any other things that I personally wasn't that fond of in regards to this movie, I would say some of the humor, for me personally, was a little bit too lowbrow, but that's just my personal opinion. Everyone's sense of humor is different, but it was a little bit too lowbrow for my taste at times. But other than that, and Tapia and how much she sucked, and some of the sequences that are a little bit too long, I loved Bad Boys 2. And I loved it when I first saw it, and I still love this film. I genuinely love this movie. I think it's a great, over-the-top action movie with some genuinely epic, badass scenes of action with two badasses as the lead characters. So it's just one of those films that, yeah, I still don't get the hate. And if you haven't seen it yet, and you've been avoiding it because of the reviews and the negativity and so on and so forth, check it out for yourself. Give it a shot, because it's definitely worth it. At least one shot, if you ask me. Even if you're not really a fan of Michael Bay, I think it's definitely worth at least one watch, because Will Smith and Martin Lawrence are fantastic, and the action sequences in this are some of the best that you will see, especially the car chase on the freeway. But anyway, thank you for watching my review of Bad Boys 2, and as always, I'll see you later. See ya.